Hey there, and welcome to the Catching Up with Casey show, where we talk about anything and everything that has to do with building cohesive, vision-driven teams. I am Casey Watts, school impact strategist and the host of this show. Now, if you are here, then you inevitably are an instructional leader who wants to make change happen, even when change seems impossible. And you can do that if you have cohesive, vision-driven teams that have done clarity work. They know exactly where they're headed and how they're going to get there. These teams have done identity work, and they've built their self and social awareness skills. And they have done collaboration work, and they know how to move beyond faux collaboration to get to true collaboration where change happens and where people get on board. I'm so excited to bring to you conversations that help you to do exactly that. The work that needs to be done to build cohesive, vision-driven teams. Now, with all of that said, let's dive into today's conversation. Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to, I can't believe it, but episode 93 of the Catching Up with Casey show. Tonight is going to be a wonderful episode. I'm so pumped about this episode. I probably say that about every episode, but tonight, maybe I'm double excited. Because tonight we're going to be talking about collaborative lesson planning for inclusion teachers. And I have two special guests with us, Hannah and Christy, and they're going to introduce themselves in just a little bit. But I have to tell you guys that I invited them to be on this show after listening to their session at a conference back in, was it September, ladies?
September.
I think it was September. And so I was keynoting the conference. Right after my keynote session, I went straight to their session, which was all about collaboration. Imagine me going to a session on collaboration. I was super interested. And let me tell you what, they knocked it out of the park, had so many great things to share, and they're going to share a little bit of that tonight. So Hannah and Christy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. So you guys, yeah.
Do you want us to introduce?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Do you want to begin, Hannah? Okay. Hey, I'm Hannah Lawler. I'm a sixth grade inclusion teacher at Ocean Springs Upper Elementary. And Christy and I serve as our site coordinators at our school as well.
Yes, and I'm Christy Bostic, and I have come into teaching from a little bit of a different background, and I serve as an inclusion teacher for sixth graders along with Hannah, and we've been partnered together for the last couple of years. So,
yeah, that's awesome. And tell our audience, how long have you each been in education?
This is my 7th year in education. I started as an assistant and then went into the classroom teaching 6th grade ELA and social studies, and then made the leap to special education.
I'm a COVID entry teacher. I came in, so this is technically my 4th year in a classroom.
Yeah. Okay. So not like super long that you guys have been in education. I mean, you still, I would say, are considered veteran teachers, but even still, you kind of came in guns blazing, and you have run with some strategies that you know are going to be best for not only your students, but really for yourselves as well. And so I want to start by asking you guys a little bit about planning specifically. So you have a couple of different perspectives, because you've been in a couple of different situations as far as planning goes. And now you are inclusion teachers, and you have a very unique way of collaborative lesson planning. But what do you feel like are the challenges for people who are planning independently, especially in an inclusion classroom? And how does collaboration address those issues? So what are the challenges of planning independently?
Yeah. Do you mind, Casey, if I start by kind of framing up where this all started with a little bit of a story?
Absolutely.
Because I think it's relevant. And this story really explains kind of the challenges that we were dealing with at the time. So, last year, Hannah and I came together in a mentor-mentee relationship, and we were facing very, very high caseloads. And we were just really kind of struggling to understand. It was the beginning of the school year. We were struggling to understand how we were going to manage all the diverse needs of our students. And we sat together and we just kind of started talking, and we were going kind of student by student, and we were reviewing all of our students' different individual goals. And what we started to realize was that there was a significant amount of overlap in those goals. And I think that this is not an unusual situation. Oftentimes we're working from goal banks that are either in the computer systems that we're working with, or there are our own personal goal banks where we know a student needs to work on a specific skill, and we have a goal that is worded in a very specific way, and we've used it and we know it works well. And so Hannah would read a goal and I would say, wait a minute, I have that goal too. And then she'd read another goal and I'd be like, wait a minute, I have something really similar to that. And so this light bulb just kind of went off for me, which is, why are we both planning for the same goals every single week? We are duplicating our efforts here. And really, that's kind of where this all started. And I'll share, and then I want Hannah to talk about kind of her, because we're talking about the challenges. So, before this model, because I'm not an educator by trade. I came into this in an alternate route situation. And so I would spend hours and hours planning for my students because I'm a perfectionist and I wanted to get it right and I wanted to elevate students, but I didn't know any other way of doing it at the time. And so for me, the amount of time it takes to plan for inclusion students and a whole host of goals, that for me was one of my greatest challenges in the beginning.
Yeah. So on and looking at this, I honestly thought, I was like, I don't know how long I can do this. I was like, maybe I just need to go back to the classroom, teach ELA and social studies again, because it was so daunting and overwhelming at first. I was like, I can't do this. I was like, I can't do math and ELA. I can't do all these different things. And so I was a little hesitant when Christy brought this up, but I was also very thankful, because I was like, this is going to be so much better for my students that I don't have to pull math resources. This is going to be so much better, for me, so that I'm not, burning myself out, so early on. And so again, I was hesitant, but I was so thankful. I was like, maybe this is our saving grace. Maybe we'll be able to make it through. And thankfully it was.
Yeah. So I just want to pause there and comment on what you guys are mentioning. Like, it's all, so many teachers struggle with exactly what you were talking about, and they reach burnout way too quickly. But I would say that partially it's because we don't have people stepping up and saying, hey, wait a minute, we could go about doing this really differently, and it could be so much better for us and for our students. And Hannah, you said you were hesitant at first. Why? Like, what do you feel like caused the hesitancy? What were you hesitant about?
So a misconception that I had and that other people have when we tell them about our plan is, how is that individualized? It feels like breaking a rule almost. And we can get into that more later, but it's still individualized. It's just sharing the planning. It's sharing, the scope of how we can get all these tools and resources. And trying something new is scary. So it was like, maybe we just need to stay in our classrooms and struggle, by ourselves and just figure it out. And I don't know, felt a little nervous, talking to administrators about this, like, hey, do you mind if we do this? And, they loved it. They were like, absolutely. Especially now that, we've worked through a year of the kinks, and everybody's on board, but it was just that beginning hesitancy.
And I think there's like something just kind of overwhelming. I mean, if you look at the plan that we provide or that we put together, I mean, every single goal for every single sixth grader that we have at our school, and we're at a very large school, is in this plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so that at first, when you're looking at it, can be pretty daunting, because there's just so many. And so I think that too, kind of that heavy lift at the beginning of the planning, it can feel like a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things I was going to mention too, is so often the things that are worthwhile really take a lot of time and energy and effort in the beginning, but the results of that can far outweigh the effort and time that you put into it, and that how daunting that can feel in the beginning. So, okay. Now I know our audience is really wanting to know, like, what is this process that you are implementing that is so successful? So why don't you walk us through what it is you guys do differently or decided to do differently?
Yeah. Do you want to take a stab at that first, or you want me to?
You can start.
Okay. I'll start, and Hannah will jump in. So, I'll start at the beginning. So when we convinced our colleagues to join us in this effort. And so when we sat together, there were some meetings on the front end where we were literally sitting together. And the very first step was kind of us taking a look at a lesson planning template that we wanted to use, something that our administrators would approve, something that we were all comfortable with using. And so, we got lucky, I have to say, because we were already collaborating lightly. Like, there was another teacher, I had taken her plan and tweaked a little bit, and I think Hannah had taken mine and tweaked a little bit. So we were all kind of using something very similar. And so we did really get lucky there. But our plan, so we started to kind of group our students. We started to look at, where are their needs? Where are we really focusing in? What grade levels are we focusing on? And we kind of just started to create these like subgroups of special education students based on their needs. And then once we had kind of grouped our students, we really took a look at kind of, what are all of our strengths? What are we good at? What are we comfortable with? What do we like? What do we dislike? And we really started just kind of saying, okay, how do we want to specialize our teachers in these different areas of the plan, in order to kind of maximize their skill sets? And so that was kind of our second piece. And it's kind of interesting because we all enjoy what we're planning now. And there's something about when you enjoy what you're planning for, it's not as much of a task. It doesn't feel kind of as heavy. So that was kind of our next step. And really from there, I mean, what do you think? Was it just kind of getting started? I was just kind of taking that first dive into it.
And there were some tweaks. We looked at ELA as a whole, and then we were like, well, we need informational and we need literary. Math, we kept together. Then we looked at vocabulary and fluency. So more things stemmed as we looked at our students writing. And so then we just looked at the skills and we grouped our students. And then, like Christy said, we looked at ourselves and we were like, what can we do? And what will we enjoy? And like I said, I was thankful to give math to someone else. So, and like she said, we all enjoy what we're planning, and that's really helpful, so that we're not like, oh, I have to plan again. We're actually like, okay, I have some ideas, I'm looking forward to doing this. So that helps in our planning.
The other thing that's interesting is, because we are enjoying the areas we're planning in, because we are comprehensively planning in that area of focus that we have, our plans stretch over 2 weeks for our students. And so all of a sudden, we went from planning, I was before this planning for 19 students, multiple goals each, just all of these areas every single week. Now I'm planning, actually, because we have more teachers now, I plan half of math every 2 weeks. And it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. What does that free up time for you to be able to do?
Oh my goodness. Paperwork.
Yeah. Because you have a lot of it.
Yes. Helping our students, helping our teachers. So part of our position as site coordinators is to support our teachers and to serve as, sort of liaison between our teachers and our administrators. And it helps free up that time to serve best in our role.
Yeah.
I would say if we weren't planning in this way, I don't know that Hannah and I could have taken on that liaison role. Mm-hmm. I don't think we would have had the capacity to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much to unpack about what you guys have said so far, but I want to lean into two things. Number one, you were talking about using a common lesson plan, right? Or lesson plan format, lesson plan structure. Mm-hmm. And there's so much benefit to that. I think we don't realize that, and you guys heard me talk about this when I did the keynote, like, when we can provide clarity, it is going to allow our teachers to have more capacity for what they do. And part of clarity means that we are creating consistency across classrooms. And it frees up so much brain space and brain power to be able to do the things that you need to place your time and effort into. But then that kind of leads me into, what do we actually want to put our effort into? And it's the things that we take great joy in, like if I know my working genius is going to be like, part of it is, I don't know, literacy instruction, and I'm really creative with literacy instruction, then why wouldn't I be the one to create some of these plans and build some of the materials that we're using? So kudos to you guys for that. Now, are there other things that you want to share about it before I start jumping into like all of these questions? Because the questions are just popping. Just get ready for it. What else do you feel like our audience would want to know about this process you guys have taken on?
Before the questions, it doesn't have to be a fancy lesson plan template. It can literally just be whatever you're already using. Or whatever your friend's using. It's not like we have, a secret sauce that, we've conjured up as far as the template. So, it's not unattainable. Just pick a good template.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, everything that we have done to pull this planning together, it's free. It didn't cost us anything. And I think that sometimes people get nervous that it's going to be too expensive or they won't be able to do it because of financial constraints. That is not the case with this plan.
We're not selling a product at all.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so I want to know, like, typically, let's say you're getting ready, like you're building the lesson plans for 2 weeks. You have your team members who are taking each component of that lesson plan. Do they have like time frames of when you expect the lesson plans to be completed, or like how are resources included? Like, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So whenever we're looking at the time frame, it would be the second week. So we, try to start on Monday, and just chip away at the plan as much as we can. And then our expectation as a team is to be done with it Friday afternoon so that it can be submitted. And then resources, we pull from anywhere and everywhere. It can be, the free resources we find. It could be teacher pay teacher, any of the things that our school uses. iReady has good resources that we go, back grade levels and pull items from there. And then we just link them all in our lesson plan. So, nothing crazy. It's just putting it all together in one template.
And the reason it's Fridays for us specifically is our school requires all of our teachers to submit lesson plans on Fridays. They're all due Friday by 4:00. And that's just kind of our culture. And so we were able to get an exception. Our administrators love this model, and they were able to give us an exception so that we do every other week. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we're trying to hit that Friday deadline. And, for other schools that might have, I wasn't going to mention this, but I will, for other schools that might have a similar deadline, we found that having kind of an appointed submitter role is really helpful. So this person checks in with everyone, and we have it's just a group text, right? It's just a group chat, and it's, hey, is everyone ready to go? And, we'll all chime in like, yes, my stuff's done, or I need 20 more minutes, or whatever that is. And that person checks in and they do the submitting so that we know that we don't have multiple people submitting, that we know the plan is complete. And so that's why it happens for us on Fridays.
Yeah. Now, I imagine you guys know your team members fairly well, is what it sounds like. And so going into something like this, I would advocate you've got to spend some time getting to know one another and building that culture of collaboration. But, and you may not want to answer this on live TV, but how have you addressed pushback, if there has been any?
Just reiterating that it is individualized, because that's the biggest argument, is it's not individualized. Y'all say it is and it's not. And, we just have to say, but it is. We're just getting the tools. We're just getting the resources. It's our job as teachers to say, my student has this resource pulled, for themselves. Let me see how I can use it to best address their needs.
And to be completely candid, I did offer to bake brownies with walnuts because that was the request. And it hasn't happened yet, but it will.
Yeah.
The holidays are upon us.
Yes, food can win us over, that's for sure. Even speaking of with it not being individualized, even when you put in you create the plans, you put in the resources, it's addressing the goals. Even still, we have a responsibility as teachers to differentiate as needed to meet the needs of our students. So it's not like I'm going to take something and teach it as is for every single student. I know I still have to do my job in differentiating. I mean, that's the craft of teaching. We have to bring that to the table. So what about like the general ed classroom teachers? How do you feel like this affects them, or does it? Like, is there a way to include them in this process?
You can see.
So I know, like for me with math, I utilize our general education teachers every other week. And well, it's pretty much every week. And so I'm always asking them, so many of our students, I think this is probably the case in a lot of places, these multi-step math word problems, there's a lot of goals, a lot of kids with a lot of multi-step goals. And the way our math in sixth grade works, so much of that math are multi-step problems. So oftentimes it aligns very well with our sixth grade curriculum, what we're remediating, because it's those multi-step problems and we can kind of layer that together. And so I'm always reaching out to our gen ed teachers to say, hey, as we think towards the next couple of weeks, what are areas that would be really good to focus on with our students? Areas that we're looking for that I can overlap goal work and focus on, the areas they need, but also overlap it with the general ed curriculum and what they're focused on in the classroom. Because in my opinion, when we can overlap those two, goal work and remediation, with what they're learning, I believe that we hit kind of a sweet spot for our students when we can do that. And so I really do try to utilize gen ed as it relates to math every week.
Okay, now that you spoke to that, in ELA, whenever they're reading a book, I like to use resources with the book, just so they aren't having to work harder, than everyone else, more than they already have to, using the book or the text that they're reading, and tying in those skills, working on their goals in that way.
We also do it with our vocabulary. Our school subscribes to Flowcabulary, such an awesome program. And they have so many great resources. And so, we're able to tie in a lot of those resources where we're getting the vocabulary skills, the reading skills, kind of all in one. And that's another place where we're able to kind of find that sweet spot, is vocabulary.
Yeah. Yeah. When I did the keynote for the CEC conference, the signature topic was moving beyond silos. And I just want to speak to that for a moment, because what it sounds like is, as special educator, I would say any educator really can feel like they are siloed, right? We go into our classrooms, we close the doors, and it can feel very alone sometimes. And especially for special education teachers, when you're moving into planning, if you are doing that on your own and you are secluded not only from your peer special education teachers, but also the gen ed teachers who typically have each other to get together and they're planning, they have that common planning time. Our special education teachers don't always have that. And so what you are doing alleviates those silos to an extent, right? Like you're taking the step to break down the walls. It would be so interesting to see how this worked if you were able to bridge the gap between special education teachers and gen ed teachers. Like if you were all a part of that process, it would be fascinating. I don't know how it would work. Sometimes the logistics, you're like, how would that even work? But still, it would be wonderful to see that.
But I think with the right minds in the room, I think it's very possible. I mean, I think, and I shared this with you when we met at the conference, we're just scratching the surface of this. We've had a year with this model. We have worked out a lot of the kinks. We're going to continue to shine the stone. We're going to continue to work to make it better. And I think that that's a really important next step, and we got some questions at the conference about that collaboration with gen ed. And, one of the pieces is kind of formalizing that collaboration within the plan. So I noticed, like, one of the things I started doing in the math section is, I was having those conversations before and I was planning before, but I wasn't sharing the nuts and bolts of those conversations within the plan, like the why, right? So like, why am I recommending that we work on these areas? And so that's one of the things I've added. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yeah.
And so I'll add, like, in conversation with gen ed this week, here's what they recommend. And I'll put those things. And so, I think that's a start, Casey. I don't think we're there, but it's a start. And it's kind of creating a formalized structure for that. I think it's possible.
Yeah. Man, that's so powerful. How has administration, you've already mentioned how on board administration is, but for people who maybe are thinking about approaching this in the same way that you guys have, what would you suggest to administrators to help them support their people who want to do this kind of work?
Just, discussing the benefits with them and maybe even sharing the struggles that they're currently, facing, to say, like, I feel extremely, alone and overwhelmed. And I heard about this great idea, so I think I'd like to give it a try. It just takes open-minded teachers and open-minded administrators to, see the vision and, see it through.
And it's just, it's sitting down to have those conversations, the conversations that can sometimes be like hard and uncomfortable, because it's hard to admit sometimes you feel like you're underwater, right? And I think if we can come together and have those conversations, what can be born out of them, I kind of feel like it's endless, right? Like, we can create anything when we come together in this way. And so I think just starting, if I were an administrator, just starting those conversations, the hard conversations, what are you losing sleep over at night? Because I'll tell you, before we started this plan, I was losing sleep over lesson planning. And I think there probably are a lot of teachers that are inclusion teachers, special education teachers, probably regular teachers, who are losing sleep over lesson planning, especially if they're planning in silos. And so I think if we can have those conversations about what are we losing sleep over, and how can we put our minds together and get creative and come up with a new way to do this, in a way that's going to be effective for our students and our teachers and our administrators.
Yeah. Hannah, were you going to add something?
I was, yes. And I feel like, if we can win administration over with this idea, they can kind of help give other teachers a push. Some teachers may be interested and other teachers may be like, absolutely not. If we can just, get support, and, sometimes people just need a little push, let's try something new. Especially if they've been doing this for a long time. They're like, I'm good, I got this. And other teachers may be wanting to try it. So, if we have that support, if administrators see, this could be beneficial for my teachers and our students, that could be helpful as well.
And I think we have to acknowledge that we're only as strong as our weakest link, right? And so, I've had conversations with teachers who are like, oh yeah, like, we're good, but like, he's not so good over there, she's not so good over there. And it's like, wait a minute, we are only as strong as we all are together as a team, and we need to be at our best for our students. That's what's most important. So our job as teammates, as colleagues, is to lift up others. That is, in my opinion, part of our role. And so, and when we lift up others, we are lifting up our students in return. And so, I think we've got to keep that in mind as well.
And she mentioned our students. This also provides consistency for our students across the whole grade level. Whereas, if we have a weak link, perhaps, their students may not be getting the best help that they could be getting. So we need to provide that consistency across the grade level. It shouldn't be like, well, that grade was a wash. Let's try again next year. We've got to bridge these gaps for our students. We can't just say, oh, well, maybe next year, we gotta help them.
Yeah, absolutely. When I'm working with leaders, one of the things that we focus on is like the clarity cycle framework. And you guys know clarity is a big thing for me. And so you guys mentioned a couple of things about how if you're spending so much time lesson planning, well, you really don't have the capacity then to turn around and implement stellar lessons that hit home with your students. And I think we really have to think about that. But we don't know to shift that or to change that unless our teachers are sharing those really transparent things with us. And those teachers aren't going to share those transparent things unless we're going out and asking the questions. So, I want to reiterate that we've got to get out there and talk to our people instead of making the assumption that things are fine and dandy when they in reality maybe are not.
I'd like to give a shout out to Dr. Case. She's always out and about, and she's always saying, what can I do for you? What do you need from me? And, I feel like if more administrators were like that, we would see a huge change in education.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. Ladies, what else do you want to share before we close this podcast episode?
Goodness.
I don't know.
Hold on. I need to flip just a minute. Let's do this just a minute to flip.
Good.
We came prepared. I think if we're talking about takeaways, is that kind of where we're at? Where we're going to talk about takeaways? I think I would love for people to take away from this that being collaborative, we're specifically talking about this lesson planning model, but it goes beyond that. It's a game changer. It is what's best for our students. It is what's best for our teachers. It's what's best for our administrators. And I really think, even though it can be a heavy lift, the benefits far outweigh any costs that are associated. And most of these costs are going to be your time, and time is valuable. But I think what we spend in the beginning, we get back tenfold on the back end.
Definitely.
And we have to keep that in mind. And so, that's what I hope people will take away from this evening.
Yeah, I love it. Hannah, do you have anything to add to that?
I would just say, this is going to significantly reduce burnout for our teachers, especially special education teachers, because we always need special education teachers. Once we get them, we need to keep them, so we need to try anything. If this sounds crazy, okay, but let's try it. What's the worst that can happen? It flops. And it hasn't. So
yeah, I love that. So that reminds me, I put a sticky note. Sometimes I put sticky notes and stuff in the bathrooms at schools. And with a sticky note that I put in the bathroom, it said something to that effect, like, is there an idea that you've been thinking about trying, but you're afraid it's going to fail, ... do it anyway. Like, just take the risks. So what if it fails? You can try again in a different way later. But that holds us back so often is the fear of failure or the fear of, man, all of this time that and energy I'm going to have to put into this, is it going to be worth it? But we just have to believe that, yes, it is going to be worth it. And two, in addition to everything that you guys have said, where you spend your time, where you prioritize your time matters. And so if we are prioritizing time spent into things that are not going to benefit us in the long run, then we really need to adjust how we're dedicating time to different things. And so, man, I want to challenge leaders. I know it is so hard to find time, but time is what everybody wants. And when I work with schools, almost all the time, they say, I wish I had more time with my colleagues. All the time. That's what people say. I want more time with my colleagues. And so we got to find ways to make that happen.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. All right, ladies. Well, you've given your final takeaways. Can our audience find you on social media anywhere? Or is there a way they can get in touch with you?
Yes, absolutely. So we made a Gmail. We are a Google district. So super simple. We just did Hannah and Christy OS because we're from Ocean Springs at gmail.com. So, if you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer. And we've also got a sample lesson plan template. Again, nothing fancy. We're not trying to sell anything, just trying to give anybody who wants to try this an idea somewhere to start.
Yeah, so anyone who reaches out via email, we'll be happy to send that to you all as to get you started.
Okay, that's fantastic. And guys, you're going to see that information in the show notes. So don't worry if you didn't catch it. It'll be on the replay. If you're a part of my email list, that will be in the email as well. If you're not a part of the email list, go to catchingupwithkc.com. You're going to scroll down to the bottom. It'll give you an option to subscribe to the email list. I tell my audience or my email subscribers what the episode is each week. I send out free resources. I send out tips for all of you instructional leaders who are trying to build cohesive, vision-driven teams on your campus, just like these ladies are trying to do on their campuses. Ladies, this has been so great. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having us,
Yes,
Casey.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, guys, we will catch you next time. Bye. Hey there. Thanks for joining this episode. I would love for you to do me 3 solid favors before you head out. Number 1, subscribe to this show. I've got a lot of great guests and content coming up, and I don't want you to miss any of it. Number 2, share this show. Share it with your like-minded colleagues and friends and those leaders who are eager to build cohesive, vision-driven teams. And finally, connect with me on all the social media platforms. You can find me at Catch Up with Casey on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Until next time, go off and create teams that leave people feeling inspired, empowered, and eager for more each day.